A Samba school is a club or dancing school. They practice and often perform in huge square compounds devoted to practicing and exhibiting Samba, an African-Brazilian dance. The schools have a strong community basis and are traditionally associated with a particular neighborhood. They are often seen to affirm the cultural validity of the Afro-Brazilian heritage in contrast to the mainstream education system, and have evolved often in contrast to authoritarian development. The phrase Escola de Samba is popularly held to derive from the schoolyard location of the first group's early rehearsals. In Rio de Janeiro especially, they are mostly associated with particular shanty towns. Samba and the Samba school can be deeply interwoven with the daily lives of the shantytown dwellers. Throughout the year, the Samba schools have various happenings and events, most important of which are rehearsals for the main event, which is the yearly carnival parade. Each of the main schools spend many months each year designing the theme, holding a competition for the song, building the floats and rehearsing. It is overseen by a carnavalesco, or carnival director. From 2005, some 14 of the top Samba schools in Rio have used a specially designed warehouse complex the size of 10 football pitches, called Samba City, to build and house the elaborate floats. Each school's parade may consist of about 3,000 performers or more, and the preparations, especially producing the many different costumes, provide work for thousands of the poorest in Brazilian society. The resulting competition is a major economic and media event, with tens of thousands in the live audience and screened live to millions across South America. Carnival Parade. The formal parades during Carnival, a uniquely Brazilian phenomenon, are a showcase of each main escola, enhanced by the participation of celebrities, fans and guests who often pay large sums of money for their elaborate costumes. In Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, the formal parades are held in specially constructed arenas called Sambadromes, designed by influential architect Oscar Niemeyer. The Sambadromes are designed to accommodate all social classes, with VIP lounges, tourist sections, and various types of seating right down to cheapest seats for poorest sections of the community. Those who choose to only watch the parade may also be charged for the best seats. Each school displays glamour in colorful costumes and floats with special effects and is organized into different segments or alas. The alas represent different components of the school's theme, or enredo, as they act out a homage to a myth, historic event or figure, or express the view on a social, environmental or international issue. The alas display distinct costumes or fantasias, and also reflect traditional Samba school roles developed years ago. Thus, each Samba school parade has the Comissão de Frente, individuals who open the parade by walking in social attires, saluting the crowds, the Ala das Baianas, or the traditional segment of Bahian African-Brazilian ladies with impressive round dresses spinning through the avenue, the Puxadores singing the Samba enredo, or theme song, while they play the cavaquinho, or other string instruments, the veligada, or veterans who made history in the school, the bateria, or Samba band with drums, cucas, and other instruments, preceded by the madrinha da bateria, or band godmother, who is often a sexy female celebrity, the porta-bandeira, or the female flag holder, and the mestressala, or male courtesy, display and salute the school's flag, as they dance and strive to show harmony and Samba expertise, as the performance is carefully observed and scored by the judges. Rio de Janeiro Janeiro and São Paulo. Cariocas, the Rio natives, and Paulistanos, São Paulo natives, are overtaken with emotion while performing or watching the favorite school. Much more so in Rio, where a carnival samba school culture has been developed since the 1930s, and samba rehearsals, costume making, and planning is a year-round event. It is often said that of samba schools, slum dweller may not have a job or food on the table the whole year, but they will make sure they have the money for the costume to show their samba no P or dancing skills expertise. As samba schools originated in Rio de Janeiro, they are today the most famous ones and, arguably, produce the most spectacular parades of the greatest show on earth. The city of São Paulo also has a number of samba schools with some tradition that is linked to an interesting mixture of African-Brazilian display of pride, immigrant or working-class activism, and soccer team fondness, as schools such as Gaviões da Fiel, Mancha Verde, began as a singing, dancing group that cheered and rooted during matches in São Paulo stadiums. Nearly all Brazilian states have samba schools, but states such as Bahia and Pernambuco tend to have floats that lead a crowd composed of general people, without the need for membership, rehearsals or even a special attire. Some groups do charge a certain amount of money for the abadas, or colorful t-shirts that display affiliation to a specific group, or bloco, organization of samba schools. A significant majority of the samba schools, mainly in Rio de Janeiro, have in the name the words Grêmio Recreativo Escola de Samba, represented by the acronym GRES before the name itself. In São Paulo there is a common variation, Grêmio Recreativo Cultural e Escola de Samba. There are exceptions, such as the Sociedade Rosas de Ouro and the traditional Agremiação Recreativa Cultural e Escola de Samba Vizinho Faladeira. The standardization of the classifications of entities emerged in 1935 when the Rio Carnival associations were required to take a charter to the Delegacia de Costumes e Diversos to be able to parade. In an effort to show a modicum of decency and organization, the delegate owner, Dulcidio Goncalves, refused to grant the permit to associations with inappropriate names, which is why the GRES Portela had to change to the current name, instead of the previous Vico Mopode. The samba school system seems to be unique to Brazil. Unlike parades such as the Rose Parade in California, for instance, the samba schools organizations consist almost entirely of community volunteer work. More than just musical groups, the schools have the neighborhood associations that cover a variety of community needs, such as educational resources and medical care. There are often political and commercial interests involved as well, even from abroad, especially when the samba school honors the literature, music and dance, or a myth, historic figure or event from another country. Drug lords who control trafficking in the Rio favelas as well as illicit gambling are also said to contribute financially to schools, as many of them are guardians and controllers of shantytown life. History. The origins of samba schools are linked to the history of carnival in Rio itself, as well as the creation of the modern samba. The first parades, or costumes, as Luso-Brazilians called them, were more exclusive events and used to have white revelers, rather than mostly African Brazilians like nowadays. The rhythms were often the marchinas, with a more Portuguese or European flair. Samba players from a group called Estácio were the pioneers of present-day samba schools, with the founding of Deixa-me falar, or Let Me Speak in 1928. Ismael Silva seems to have been the first to have come up with the idea of creating blocos de carnaval, in which groups could dance and move to the samba rhythms and sounds. The first samba school contests began in 1928 and were held at the home of Zé Acute Espinguela, where his conjunto Oswaldo Cruz won, and Mangueira and Dixafala also competed for the title. Some consider this as the starting point leading to the development of present-day samba schools. However, between 1930 and 1932, these were only considered a variation of the blocos local street parade celebration, and in 1932 the owner of Mundo Sportivo, Mario Filho, decided to sponsor the first parade of samba schools in Praia. Composers such as Antonio Nasser, Armando Reis and Orestes Barbosa had the idea of organizing a carnival parade which was supported by local newspapers. Newspaper owners and journalists such as Mario Filho and his brother Nelson Rodrigues, who did not have much to write about after the end of the soccer season, joined journalist Carlos Pimentel, who was connected to samba personalities, in holding a parade at Praia Square. At the invitation of Sports World, 19 schools attended. The newspaper established the criteria for judging the participating schools, and nowadays news networks still have some say on the parades as they strive for fairness and high quality, especially because so much money is invested on TV networks that have broadcasting rights for the parades. Newspapers and magazines also make huge profits. The traditional Ala das Baianas was a prerequisite to compete, and the schools, all with more than 100 members, should present sambas unpublished and not use pipe instruments, among other requirements. The winning school was Mangueira, while the second group had the conjunto Osvaldo Cruz, or Portela. The officials assured the success of the contest remained up in Praia Square in 1941. Over time, the samba schools took many elements brought by ranchers, such as the plot, the pair of mestre sala cortesy and flag holder, and the opening committee, elements with which Ismael Silva disagreed. With the rise of populist dictator Getulio Vargas and the foundation of the General Union of Samba Schools in 1934, the marginalization of samba persisted for some time. Then, it regained power and began to expand and gain importance in the Rio Carnival, supplanting the Ranches Carnival. It did not take long for the samba schools to expand to other states, with the foundation in 1935 of the Primeira São Paulo, the first school of samba de São Paulo. The official competitions of the samba schools in São Paulo only started in 1950 with the victory of Abetens, but before that there were other minor tournaments at the municipal and state levels. In the early 1960s, some organized soccer support fan groups, like the Vai Vai and the Camisa Verde Branco, became samba schools. Due to the large number of schools, in 1952, the Access League Grupo de Acesso was created in order to allow new schools in and promote them to the Premier League only if they abided by certain rules of excellence. That year, the parade of the Access League went seamlessly, but the parade of the main group was carried out under heavy rain. The judging results were cancelled and all schools belonging to the Access League were promoted to the Premier League. In 1953, UGESB and FBIS Association of Schools of Samba City in Rio de Janeiro merged as LIESA, an association of samba schools from the Premier League which became known in Portuguese as Grupo Especial. In 2008, LESGA was created, representing schools from the Access League. LIESA inspired the creation of similar bodies in other cities, such as Liga SP. In 1984, Rio de Janeiro Governor Leonel Brizola dedicated the Sambadrome, a special space for the parading of samba schools. Years later, in São Paulo, Mayor Luísa Erundina did the same, creating the Anhembi Sambadrome. Today, many other cities throughout the country also have the Sambadromes, including Manaus, and in 1993 its parade was broadcast for the first time. Characterization. Natural associations are almost always local, largely from poor communities of the suburbs, forming samba schools that usually represent in a district, sub-district or set of districts, a parade which usually has local character, whereas the main schools of the city gather to compete among themselves for the best of the year. In this show, conducted over 2 nights, they are evaluated by a committee of judges chosen in advance by the leaders or by the representative. The judges consider each of the judging categories, giving points to each. On the day that the results are announced, the final assessment of the panel can be affected by certain penalties for breaking certain rules, such as the requirement to parade within specific time limits, parading with the minimum components, and avoiding total nudity.